New tonight at 10, yet another electric rate increase could be coming to Hannibal. The Hannibal Board of Public Works hosted a public hearing tonight to explain the increase. WGEM's Zeke Shapiro was at the meeting. So Zeke, you mentioned things got a bit heated tonight.
Well, Daniel, heated is putting it lightly. Back in October, residents were hit with a 6% rate increase. City aldermen and residents held nothing back as they laid into the board over the latest proposed increase. The board tells me the proposed 7% rate increase can be difficult to navigate with the community due to the complexities of the electricity industry. Facial expressions seem to tell the whole story on how the HBPW rate increase hearing went tonight.
The snappy comments and the cutting off is just not professional.
The board claimed the winter storm in January caused 8 times as much spending on electricity, leading to a shortfall in funds for the rest of the 2026 fiscal year.
Yeah, we're subject to rate increases for the electricity that we buy, and they can go crazy at any week of the month.
The unpredictability of the market, according to board president John Ortworth, is leading to the increases, the last which went into effect in October of last year. Ortworth said the increase will by no means result in profits.
That gets us minimal losses instead of profits.
While the reasons, according to Ortworth, were out of the board's hands, the public was not forgiven.
Less bills are actually getting paid, more shutoffs are happening, and Lord knows this department here, they just love late fees. They love disconnection fees, even though they never even come to your house.
That's that $1 million that's going to cover for a couple months. So there's going to be, what happens then?
City aldermen in attendance also pulled no punches.
Our ratepayers are getting their rates jacked way up, and you know it's not fair to them.
Second Ward Alderwoman April Azatea in particular voiced her displeasure with the board about what she said was a lack of cuts made.
Cutting office supplies, whatever. Like, you can't tell me that there's no way you can cut any minimal amount.
Azatea pointed much of her frustration at board general manager Darren Gordon.
In 4 years, what have you proposed or brought to the board to say, this is what we need to do?
Despite the arguments, the board said the increase is necessary to generate $570,000 to meet their yearly debt coverage ratio. The board also explained even with the increase, they still expect to lose $270,000 in the fiscal year. Second Ward Alderwoman April Azatea specifically called out Darren Gordon's salary, which is more than $200,000 a year. Daniel?
Thanks, Zeke. If passed, the rate increase will go into effect on March 4th.